I will call the meeting of the Waxahachie Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. Please let the record show we have 6 trustees in attendance, and this meeting has been duly called, and notice of this meeting has been duly posted for time and manner required by law. There's no need to go into closed session tonight, so we're going to skip down to item 3A, which is our open forum. This is the portion of the board meeting where the board receives input from patrons. Each person who addresses the board will have 5 minutes to speak on his or her issue. Because of posting requirements of the Open Meetings Act, board members will not ask questions of the patron nor answer any questions posed by the patron. No action can be taken on any issue presented during the patron comment section of the board meeting. Patrons addressing the board will be notified when they're approaching the last 60 seconds of their allotted time to speak. When I call your name, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And our allotted time is 5 minutes. First speaker will be Mr. Brian Wakefield.
Yes, sir. Right up here. Yes, sir.
State your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Brian Wakefield, 1234 Broadhead Road, Waxahachie. I want to just start out thanking y'all for being board members, and I know it's a tough job to have, especially non-paid. So, I want to start out with security at the games. You know, just observing, we've been going to the games for quite a few years, having reserved seating, and it's always been an issue of people sitting in your seats and so forth. Even ask them to leave. Usually we get rude comments back and so forth. And what happens is I tend to notice that security ends up at one end of the field or the other end of that middle area, and it's so crowded. I've watched elderly people get run over, pushed, shoved, continuously. When kids come up and stand on those top rails, they're always somebody always has to ask them to move. And they tend to look at you very disrespectfully when you ask them to, unless you get a security. They'll push them off, so to speak, but it seems like it starts at every beginning of every year. For the last 5 years, we've been in those reserved seats. I don't feel like it's the people that sit there having to push them out of the way, so to speak, or ask them to move, because usually asking doesn't work. Usually you have to start getting rude with the kids, and then they tend to just kind of slowly walk away. Like this past game, fights broke out. I know one good fight happened right in front of us. What I observed is security was each end of the field. None of them were standing in the middle. I think there ought to be a committee or a discussion put into play, whether it be the board or whoever is in charge of security, to put something together to implement that the people with reserved seating and so forth not have to be the ones actually enforcing who's sitting in whose seat. I've seen, usually after about the second or third game, people griping, getting on Facebook. Usually things start to change, but it needs to start from day one. Keep that middle area, because you can't even get to the rooms. You cannot even get to the concession stands without pushing your way through crowds of kids. I understand they're there to have fun, but there becomes a point where it becomes dangerous. And that's where, like the fights, the water bottles happen to start throwing because of that fight. Because everybody's pushing into everybody. So it needs a little bit more control at the games. Not to be disrespectful to security guards. I think they're just sitting in the wrong spots. They're over there chit-chatting. I understand they're having a good time as well, but they need to be spaced out. Reserved seatings, I know that the bottom levels, they tend to secure it a little bit better with chains and all that stuff. I'm not saying that has to go that far, but something needs to be looked at each entry point in the reserve section. So continuously I see people having to ask people to move from their seats, and they just tend to say rude comments and so forth, and it just shouldn't have to happen. Especially like this past Friday when the fights broke out. I mean, it could have been a lot more dangerous situation in the crowd that it was in. Hundreds and hundreds of kids are walking back and forth. But other than that, I don't have too much time, I don't think.
1 minute.
1 minute. So, but other than that, I'll kind of use this one where my wife gripes about the dropping kids off at the high school. At the high school itself, somebody needs to look at how to coordinate that. The drop off and pick up of the high school kids, because there's just not enough movement going on. There just needs to be something looked at, a committee formed of insider and outsiders, so forth, because there's people that specialize in this that can actually look and get the flow going through. It can be run a whole lot better. I've come up with 10 different solutions on how to make that traffic flow, but
10 seconds.
but that's not what I do. But I thank y'all.
Randy Donathan. Please step forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Randy Donathan. I live at 507 Farley Street here in Waxahachie. My main topic today is the taxes. And I know you guys got a tough job. The city's putting all this new building, new people's coming in, and you guys are like stuck. You're like, okay, now we got all these new kids. What are we gonna do? High school we just built is already full. Now what are we gonna do? And honest to God, I don't know what you're gonna do. But we need to do something. And the only thing I can think of is, I don't know if you can limit kids from coming in the district that don't live in the district. I heard that there was a bunch of them that transferred from Lancaster to Soto or something like that. And I mean, if you got room, that's cool. Bring them on in. We need, all we can get. But when the place gets full, it's full, it's full. As far as the taxes go, I'm all in favor of the no new revenue rate. I know you guys are opposed a rate that's a little higher than that, and I kind of understand it, but I'm 63 years old. My wife's going to retire next year. I retired last year, and our property taxes are just going up and up and up. And I've been talking to some members of city council, and the runaround I get there is, well, we've got infrastructure. Okay, we got infrastructure because you got people moving in. So we got to get more people moving in to pay for the new taxes, to pay for the new infrastructure of the new people who are coming in to pay the taxes. And it's kind of, same thing with the schools. You got all the kids coming in, and be honest, I'm putting a lot of this on the city because I think a lot of it's their fault. Is why you guys have your problems. If we could somehow limit things, and I don't know how to do it, but we need to do something. Just, it's the parking problem, the getting in and out of school, the crowdedness of the schools. It's like you plan ahead, and I know you guys have got a committee or something going for like an 11-year plan coming up, and I get that too. But it's like, maybe like the highway department, as soon as they get the road built, it's already in, it's too late. And I mean, maybe we need 5 high schools to be built next year or something, I don't know, but we got to do something, and we got to do it somehow, and we got to limit the tax burden on the people who pay the taxes too. We're going to be like, I was telling my wife, we're going to be like South Lake before long. We're going to have everybody here, the people who are born and raised here are going to have to move out, so the people who can afford to live here can live here. And then we're all gone someplace else. And anyhow, that's just what I think. And I appreciate you guys. You got a big, thankless job.
Mr. President, I would like to respond to one, and while the board can't respond, I'm going to. One of the things I wanted to be sure you're aware of is that When it comes to being a closed district, we are. That changed a few years ago, where now we do not accept out-of-district transfers for any students other than those who are employees' children. And we do that for recruiting, and it is a big recruiting tool for us. And so there are a handful of students who, whose parents may live in Midlothian, for example, and they work here, and those students are able to come with us. There are also a handful of kids who were grandfathered in. So if you had a student, that went into effect when, 3 or 4 years ago? 3 or 4 years ago. So there were some kids who were already in the system, and we did grandfather those kids in and allow them to finish and graduate in Waxahachie. But we have closed our district to out-of-district transfers. Yes, sir, and yes, sir, and the majority of the kids that are still here from out of district are students who currently are at Global, and we don't have a capacity issue currently at that building at all. So, yes, sir.
Okay, our next speaker is Mark Bimowitz. You please step forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mark Blamowitz. I live at 307 Seneca and with a Waxahachie address. I come here, I had 17 years of education, and I come here to talk to y'all about what I feel is not being taught in the public school system and also in the college. Here's a copy of the civics book. It was retrieved by one of my employees out of the trash. State Board of Education said, well, it's outdated because it's 10 years old in print. But it has an unbelievable amount of information in it. And I understand that they only teach one semester of civics. And I've became a student of the Constitution mostly by accident when a judge told me that the Constitution didn't apply here in this court when I was in there in that matter. And they're not, I don't feel like as though we're teaching the founding documents in the school system. And this book has 668 pages. It's an unbelievable composite of history and the documents. And even like, right, it can't be taught, I don't think, in one semester because it has websites to go to get more information. There's a retired school teacher, a civics teacher, he's 2 weeks younger than me. He's taught civics in the public school system, and he said the only way you're going to really do justice to teaching the Constitution or the founding documents is you're going to have 12 years of it. Right now we're suffering a lot of inflation. On page 202 of this book here, and probably a paragraph or two, it'll really explain what causes inflation. It's called paper money. It's talked about after the revolution, our money wasn't worth a continental. Well, now you turn the TV on and you see them printing sheets and sheets and sheets of $100 bills. You see bundles of $10,000 straps of paper money. A $100 bill buys what a $10 bill did in the 50s, or a $50 bill buys what a $5 bill. And so we're lacking in our education, and no matter how much money you spend on education until we start redirecting it to the founding documents, I think it's fruitless. I've addressed this personally with Governor Rick Perry about the founding documents not being taught, the Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst, Governor Abbott. I've gone to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. I've addressed the State Board of Education on this. And one year I took and started questioning, calling judges And I'd ask them a simple question: which amendment to the Constitution guarantees you to a right to a trial by jury? All the way from the Supreme Court level to the Justice of the Peace, only one judge or one judge candidate could answer that question. We're not doing justice to why so many people are trying to cross our borders when they know more about freedom than what we do. And I'm asking, and I know a lot of times when I talk to—
1 minute.
What? Okay, when I talk to school board people, they said, we're just following the state guidelines. You as board of trustees can do more by putting some pressure and heat that it be taught. All what you need is a book, a teacher, and you need to read it. And some of the people that y'all may have voted for this guy, Judge Tom Gray. He's the Chief Justice of the Civil Court of Appeals for this district, one court lower than the state Supreme Court. I talked to him. I've spoke to a crowd that he was in, and he said, what we're doing is we're concentrating too much on STEM, science,
10 seconds.
technology, engineering, and math, and not enough on civics. And I thank you for your time to listen, but I would really like to see that some action be taken. And I talked to Dr. Hollingsworth about this too when he first came. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to respond, Mr. Blinovitz, and just to let you know that we do teach United States history in 5th grade. We teach it in 8th grade. We teach it in the junior year. We also teach United States government as the senior year for every student in high school, okay? And the answer is the 6th Amendment, right to trial by jury. Yes, sir.
Okay, next item on our agenda is our public hearing. We will conduct a public hearing regarding the proposed 2022-2023 fiscal year budget and M&O and INS tax rates. Tonight we'll be holding a public hearing regarding the proposed 2022-2023 fiscal year budget and proposed M&O and INS tax rates. Following the presentation, we will invite the public to approach the podium and provide any input on the subject at hand. The public hearing will begin with a presentation by Ryan Calden, Chief Financial Officer of WISD. Mr. Calden?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Board. Dr. Hollingsworth. We've reached the end of our 6-month journey as we look into the budget for next school year. With that, let's kind of recap just a little bit where we've come from and kind of where we're going from here. We started in January and February, general time frame, meeting with every campus leader and every department leader to kind of look at their current staffing, look at their needs for next year, and any special requests for funding that they may have. In March, right after spring break, we had a meeting where we went through a budget workshop number 1. You may remember that was back over at the professional development area of curriculum and instruction. And we laid out budget priorities and talked about them for a good old time that evening. And then in April, we received an estimate of property values from the appraisal district. This is the statutory timeline. Generally, we have to get that by April 30th, and that just kind of helps inform our revenue projections and estimates. May 9th, we had our second budget workshop, and we confirmed our priorities and started working on specifics of what exactly we were going to do to address those priorities within the budget. At the end of July, we received certified taxable value information from the appraisal district, and so that was the key component that kind of helped us shore up those revenue estimates as we were going through the budget. On August 4th, we completed the Truth in Taxation worksheet, and August 8th, we had our third budget workshop and formally proposed our tax rates for the 2022-2023 school year. August 10th, we published notice of this meeting. Tonight, we are having this meeting. And then, assuming the budget is adopted tonight, it will go into effect on Thursday, September 1st. So it is one of the key components that we have to do is adopt a budget before the start of the fiscal year. As just a reminder, these were our budgeting priorities that were identified back in March, ratified or kind of confirmed for us in May. So the things in red we were absolutely able to accomplish the things in a lighter blue. I should have used a different color, my apologies. Things in a lighter blue were mostly accomplished. Some of it may be a little bit different than what we originally thought, like the plan for a 2% increase. We did a 2% increase for administrative and paraprofessional, or administrative and professional staff positions. We did a 3% increase for auxiliary and paraprofessional staff. So there is a little bit of a difference on those. And I believe we did not make a whole lot of progress on any of the Tier 3 priorities. But anyway, those will carry forward as we continue budgeting for next year. Kind of a recap of what our budget was built based off of. Expectations of student enrollment. Demographer's estimate is 11,051 students for the year. We generally do not budget demographic estimates. We go a little bit more conservative, so our estimate this year was 10,250 ADA. So if you back into an enrollment number off 95% attendance, that's roughly 10,800 students. When I did this slide, which was last week, our enrollment was 10,757 students. I believe now it's 10,775-ish. 79, thank you, sir. So we are trending in a really good direction. I believe that we will be hitting that 10,800 student right around Labor Day, early part of next week. So that's a really good spot to be in because it tells me that our revenue expectations are not too far off from where we should be sitting. Quick discussion about general fund revenue. We've talked about this a little bit in the past. On the left side of the screen, that chart is depicting local revenue within the general fund, and the one on the right is state revenue within the general fund. The percent that you see on each of those is the percent that the local revenue makes up of the entire general fund revenue budget. So you're seeing an increase of local revenue as a percent of total revenue in the general fund budget of 14.1% for this year. That's a pretty sizable increase as a percent of the entire budget. On the right chart, you're seeing a decrease in state revenue of 14.5% as revenue for the entire general fund budget. So while we are experiencing really large increases in property values and assessed values, we're also seeing a really large decrease in expected state revenue. So those we're not awash with cash, at least in an expectation of where we're going to be next year with our increasing property values. The state has taken those funds, those additional funds we're expecting, and they're using it for a different purpose. So because it makes such a large component of it, property values, we are experiencing about a 29.5% increase in our freeze-adjusted taxable values for this year. That number is a little bit lower than what you would expect because if you'll remember that homestead exemption went from $25,000 to $40,000. So that's already factored in that 29.5% increase. The real number was, I want to tell you, closer to 35-36% of taxable values before the freeze adjustment. So as we go through and we work on the budget, we need to know what our student enrollment or attendance is going to be to develop that ADA. We also need to know what property values are going to be because those are the two main components that are going to factor into our M&O budget for the year. Those are our two main revenue drivers. So within the budget for M&O this year, we were able to dedicate professional learning community time, so dedicated time for our staff at every campus to be able to work together as a professional learning community. To do that, we had to return the secondary campuses to teaching 6 of 8. With that, you approved some staff members to make that happen. We also worked on honoring all of our staff to ensure that our teachers received a minimum of $1,100 salary increase. We know that inflation is out there eating up paychecks, and so we're trying our best to make sure that our staff can still have the funds that they need to put food on the table, but also be competitive with other districts. We are targeting some increases for staff to improve our competitiveness. So staff with 0 to 4 years of teaching experience are going to see a larger increase than the $1,100. They're going to see a $1,600 increase. Staff with 5 to 10 years of experience are going to see, I believe it's $1,300 of an increase, because we know that we are not as competitive when we look at the local DFW market at the rate of pay for those years of service. We also have a minimum 2% increase for administrative and professional staff. That is also born out of looking at some of our peer districts. There are some positions that are not as competitive with the 2% increase, so there will be some recommended target increases for those positions. And then also a 3% increase for all of our auxiliary and paraprofessional staff. As a reminder, we also set the minimum salary at $12 an hour for all of our full-time employees. That was a rather significant increase because it was about $10.40 or 70 cents going into this year. So having that increase will really make a difference in our competitiveness, especially at our auxiliary and paraprofessional positions. The proposed M&O tax rate is 94.29 cents on the dollar. That is about a 1.8% decrease in the rate from last year. And the chart on the right shows the trend of from $1.17 in 2018-19 down to a little over 94.25 cents and proposed for 22-23. So roughly 22.75 cent decrease since the 2018-19 school year. The other main component of the tax rate is the interest and sinking fund. Just as a reminder, interest and sinking revenue can only be used to service the outstanding debt of the district, so no surplus revenue here can be used for salaries, insurance, benefits, any other operating items of the district. We are expecting revenues to exceed expenditures this year, keeping a flat tax rate. What we plan to do is pay down existing debt, and the way that that helps taxpayers is by getting this debt off the books now. We're not continuously paying that interest cost over the remaining life of these bonds, but it will also help in the future by lowering that tax rate because we have less outstanding debt as we go forward in our service cycle. Proposed tax rate again is 38.39 cents. That's unchanged since the 2015-16 school year. As a matter of communication, we have about $230 million in outstanding debt principal in the district. It's a really big number, but if you look at the chart on the right, that's roughly the same level of outstanding debt we had back in 2017. And so 2019, we issued bonds for Simpson Elementary. To the net effect, we've retired the principal, essentially the amount of principal that we issued in those bonds since that time. So we're back to the 2017 debt. We've seen about a 1.4% decrease in outstanding bond principal since last school year. So that brings us to the total tax rate. It is $1.32.68 cents. Again, that's 94.29 cents M&O and 38.39 cents INS. That is a decrease of about $0.0125 or 1.81%, and it is down about 22 3/4 pennies or 14.5% since 2018-19. And with that, kind of a quick highlight of where we were, but it is a public hearing, so Mr. President, I turn it back over to you for public comments.
At this time, are there any individuals that would like to speak concerning the proposed 2022-2023 budget and/or tax rate? Going once? Twice? Okay, no speakers. We will now close the public hearing portion of this meeting. Now we will move into item 5, which is our consent agenda. Board, as you know, we have items A through N on our consent agenda. We can take those all in one motion, or if you would like to remove a specific item for discussion, however you would like to proceed.
Mr. President, if I may, as we consider the consent agenda tonight, I do want to point out a few things that I believe are important for the public watching to know. Regarding item G, we're pleased to propose an increase for our substitute teachers, nurses, and clerical aid positions. Substitute nurses and substitute clerical aid positions. Certified teacher subs, their pay, we propose to move from $85 to $100 a day. Degreed teacher subs, we propose to move them from $70 to $90 a day. Non-degreed subs from $70 to $80 a day. Our nurse subs, we're proposing from $85 to $130 per day. Our clerical aid subs from $70 to $80 per day. In addition, we will continue to use federal ESSER 3 enhancement funds for an additional $15 per day for days 6 through 10 in a month that a substitute works for us, and another $15 per day for 11 days or more that those individuals choose to work for us. Regarding item H for the administrative schedule, We've made several adjustments for individual campus administrators whose salaries were not comparable to our surrounding neighbors. And regarding item J, in order to honor our non-teacher pay scales, we're pleased to propose a 3% increase for all clerical, paraprofessional, and auxiliary positions, and a minimum of $12 an hour for all auxiliary positions, and a 2% increase for administrative and professional positions, except for those targeted increases in item H. But I just wanted to point those out, because those are really good for some of our lower paid individuals.
Any other questions or comments on consent agenda items A through N? Entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve items A through N on the consent agenda.
Motion by Mr. McCutcheon,
Second.
second by Ms. Starnader. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, moving into our action item A, consideration and possible action to approve final budget amendments to the 2021-2022 budgets. Mr. Calder?
Thanks, sir. Generally, at the last meeting in August every year, we do 3 repetitive things. The first thing is we amend the current year budget to be our final budget. Every year when we do the budget, we always have good intentions, but things always change because we're doing it a year in advance. So presented tonight for your approval on page 47 are the final budget amendments for the year. We ask for your approval of those for the 2021-2022 school year.
Any questions for Mr. Calden? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item A as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Timmerman. Second by Mr. Schofield. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, action item B, consideration with possible action to adopt 2022-2023 operating budgets for the general fund, debt service fund, and child nutrition fund.
All right, so what we were just talking about in our public hearing, but just kind of putting it in numbers form. Board, this was information that you received back in July in the budget book. But general fund, it is proposed balanced budget at $109,127,528. That does equate to about a $1.6 million increase in revenue, or 1.5%. It is also a $1 million decrease in expenditures, which is right at 1% or just a little bit below. And then in the debt service fund, it is about a $12.6 million surplus, keeping the same level rate. We'll use those surplus revenues to pay down existing debt to make us put us in a better financial position going forward. That is a revenue increase of about $6.9 million and an increase in expenditures of about $6.7 million from where we were this past year. One thing that you may remember that's kind of putting us in this situation, we did a bond refunding about a year ago and saved about $9 million in interest cost. Well, we accelerated some debt service payments from that bond refinancing, which is creating a lot of back room within our existing tax rate for us to go in and backfill it with paying off additional debt early. So that's kind of where these additional funds are coming from without having to change the rate. And then on the child nutrition fund, we are looking at a balanced budget again, $5,070,692. The revenue in this fund is expected to decrease about $988,000, which is about 16% decrease from last year. Same with the expenditures, a decrease of about 16%, $988,000. The reason we're expecting such a sharp decrease is because last year all students ate for free, whether you qualified for free meals, reduced meals, or did not qualify for any sort of discount on the meals. This year it's back to the regular child nutrition program without the waivers. And so all students will have to apply for free meals or reduced meals. And so we expect participation to decrease without that waiver option in place.
Any questions for Mr. Colvin on action item B? Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion for action item B as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Kriegel. Have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Starnader. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 6-0. And our last action item would be consideration with possible action to adopt a tax rate of 1.3268 per 100 in valuation, made up of maintenance and operations rate of 0.9429 and interest and sinking rate of 0.3839 cents.
Board, this is, again, kind of what we've been talking about with our public hearing. As President Knopfler just read, the M&O rate, 0.9429, and the interest and sinking, 0.3839. It will look like a 32.08% increase in the tax rate as compared to the no new revenue rate. And this will raise more tax revenue and maintenance and operation than last year's tax rate.
Questions or comments, Mr. Collins? Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item C.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Timmerman. Is there a second? Second by Mr. McCutcheon. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries 6-0. And our, yes, sir, thank you, Mr. Collins. And our last item will be, I need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Schofield. Second by Mr. McCutcheon. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much.